Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. The first thing I'll say is, if my voice sounds a little weird, or if I occasionally cough or clear my throat, it's because allergy season's up, and let's just say I'm not having a fun time in that regard. But regardless, let's get right into the news. First, an interesting news story coming from Japan. Japan court has dissolved the controversial Moonies church. A court in Japan has ordered the disbandment of the controversial Unification Church, which came under scrutiny after the shock killing of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2022. Now, let me explain this for those who might not remember. Okay, so for those who don't remember, Shinzo Abe was the Prime Minister of Japan who got assassinated by a guy who created his own gun, because in Japan they have very strict gun laws. The reason why he was assassinated was because the guy who killed him was really mad because Shinzo Abe was really close to this church called the Unification Church, also colloquially called the Moonies Church. While they technically didn't have direct connections, Abe and the assassin, the reason why he was mad was because this church had personally bankrupted his family, because the church, like most of all churches, coerced their followers into donating money to them, even though the church is doing really well, and the church, heads are doing really well, and all the people who go to the churches are doing economically poor. And the church the church is relatively controversial in Japan, not only because the church was originally formed in South Korea, which Korea and Japan have had a bit of a strained relationship, at least in the past, but also because, again, they had a bit of a shady actions. In fact, their actions were so shady that I don't know if the assassination sparked the investigation, or if the investigation was already being done, but an investigation was opened into the situation regarding the church and its donations. And during the investigation, authorities found that the church had effectively coerced its followers into buying very expensive items by exploiting fears about their spiritual well-being. So they're basically like, hey, if you don't buy this thing, if you don't do this thing for this church, then you're going to hell, essentially. That's what they're saying. Which, they're like, that's a little bit too far. Because, I don't recall, churches, I don't think, churches in the United States, at least, don't say, donate money to us or go to hell. They say, join the church or you go to hell. And then the donations are just kind of an added after the fact. But this one, it seemed to be they went a bit more fringe in that regard. So now the Moonies Church has lost its tax-exempt status, and now they're going to start looking into paying, they're going to have to start looking into, getting these guys to pay off the people that they, robbed, essentially. But the Moonies Church is going so far as to say, hey, accepting donations is part of, churches, that's what we do. So then they're okay, now we gotta go and fight back. So now they're threatening to, now they're going to try and appeal this decision. We'll have to wait and see on that, but it looks like he actually won. It looks like the dude actually won. So, it doesn't look like, it's very interesting to see how Abe's death has actually, led to something interesting in Japan. Speaking of things that are interesting, I got 3 news stories related to Israel and Palestine. Oh boy, let's talk about it. First, we're going to talk about a Palestinian news story that some people, for some reason, are really confused about. Well, not necessarily. You'll see who I'm talking about is confused about in a second. So, there is Palestinians are apparently protesting Hamas in a quote-unquote rare show of dissent in Gaza. Alright? Thousands of Palestinians marched between the wreckage of a heavily destroyed town in northern Gaza on Wednesday in the second day of an anti-war protest, which many chanting against Hamas in a rare display of public anger against the militant group. The protests, which centered mainly on Gaza's north, appeared to be aimed generally against the war, with protesters calling for an end to 17 months of daily fighting with Israel, and that has made life in Gaza insufferable. In the town of Beit Lahiya, where similar protests took place on Tuesday, around 3,000 people demonstrated, with many chanting, "The people want a fall of Hamas." In the hard-hit Shia neighborhood of Gaza City, dozens of men chanted out, Hamas, get out. Now, it's said here that that Hamas has cracked down on previous protests, but this time no crackdown has happened. I haven't seen anything about previous protests. I think there was one where it was very early on in the war, but I don't know if that happened now. I mean, clearly it hasn't happened now, but basically, here's what happened. Like, this is the thing. Like, I saw this news story, you know, and here's the sad truth. You wanna know how I learned about this news story? Because I looked into the fucking Ethan Klein Hassan like drama again, and Ethan Klein was like crying and said, like, "Why hasn't Hassan talked about the Palestinian protests against Hamas?" And I've seen like a lot of other like super hardcore Zionist like accounts on Twitter saying like, why aren't these guys covering this protest? Why aren't they covering this protest? Why aren't they covering this protest? Why aren't they covering this protest? Why? Like, they keep saying like time to day, why isn't Hassan doing this? Why isn't other pro-Palestinian creators talking about this? Why isn't journalists talking about it? They say like a lot of different things. Now I find this funny because like I find this funny in this regard because this protest proves all these Zionist creators wrong, and I don't understand why they keep bringing it up. They keep bringing up this protest, and it's like, this protest, like, proves your talking points wrong about this? Like, one of the big, like, Zionist talking points for this war is that a lot of people in Palestine are pro-Hamas. That was one of your talking points about this war? Like, don't you say, like, Hamas uses these guys, like human shields, and then say, like, oh, well, they are too foolish to, like, stand up to Hamas. Here's them standing up to Hamas. Right here, right now. Like, I mean, I genuinely don't know what your argument is. Like, aren't these the same guys who are like, man, these, like, young children are radicalized so much to, like, join Hamas and, like, be part of Hamas. And then meanwhile, hey, here's Gazans literally protesting against Hamas. It's like, what? They're only bringing this up because they want to, like, make pro-Palestinian creators look bad, even though it's like, wait, like, again, what is your point? Isn't your whole thing, like, you're trying to claim, like, oh, pro-Palestinian creators are Hamas, and then meanwhile, they could just say, hey, I support these protests against Hamas. Okay? Like, again, what is your point? What is your argument? And a funny thing that I kept seeing over and over again is a lot of these Zionist people would be like, where is Al Jazeera's journalists talking about this protest? It's like, Israel killed them all. Journalists have been killed many times over. Like, just this past week, there was a prominent journalist in Gaza that was murdered. Again, what is the point you're even making? I know the point they're making. They're just trying to make Palestine and the pro-Palestinian side look bad. They're so desperate for anything to make the pro-Palestinian side look bad that they're just like, they just want to just say anything to make pro-Palestinian side look bad. I don't even get, how does this make the pro-Palestinian side look bad? It's like, Palestine is protesting against Hamas. Okay, that has debunked your narrative that the Palestinians support Hamas. Then, like, what is your point? What is your argument? And I'll use this time to say something that I haven't said in previous episodes, I don't think, but it's a thing that I've been thinking about a little bit recently. Like, I remember when the IDF kept trying to do the whole thing where, like, Hamas equals ISIS? Well, to me, nowadays, I'm just going to say it point blank. I think I've said, like, something similar to this in the past, but I haven't said it, like, officially. I think the IDF and Hamas are way more similar than they give you credit for. I think, despite the fact that both of them claim that they're simply just trying to defend their side, their actual intentions are genocidal and based on ethno-nationalist and religious fundamentalist reasons, and neither side will admit they need the other to survive. Like, Israel will never admit the fact that they need Hamas, otherwise they can't do shit. I know this because Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government have funded Hamas multiple times when they were previously in charge, similar to how the United States, like, surveillance state, the FBI, funded the Communist Party specifically so they could have an enemy. They want that enemy around so they could point the finger and go, hey, this is the enemy. We need to fight this enemy. And Hamas needs the IDF to still be the IDF as it is, or else they can't push people into joining their cause and their fundamentalist reasons. That's the thing. They're the yin to each other's yang. Netanyahu specifically gave funding to Hamas to make the PLO look bad. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, and this protest shows it, ultimately at the end of the day, I guarantee you, I think that if Palestine were to become its independent nation, to fully be able to, like, not have any violence, not have any fighting, not have any wars, and actually go and try a fundamental democratic election, Hamas would ultimately lose. They only elected Hamas in that previous election because they were in such a dire situation that they felt, and after the quote-unquote failures of Fatah, they felt there was no other option except for Hamas. But when they're not under attack, and when they have peace, they will literally shift to any single other political outlet, whether it be Fatah or one of the other political parties in Palestine. And that's why Israel will not allow the fighting to end. Because if the fighting ends and they're able to pick themselves up, Hamas will lose power. Hamas will lose control. And that's ultimately why I believe that being pro-Palestine is the only correct cause. Because if you actually want to end the violence and end Hamas, you would believe that Palestine should be given the things that they need. It's the same thing with basically every other fundamentalist religious Islamist group in the region. If we stop attacking them and we stop literally giving them ammunition to, literally fueling their fire, if we stop doing that, then maybe they won't feel the need to form these fundamentalist groups to attack back. Anyways, next story actually is a very interesting news story. A story that apparently has been stated before, but since it comes from an Israeli, now everybody believes it. Basically, an Israeli soldier told CBS that they use Palestinian civilians as human shields. Let me repeat that again. An Israeli soldier admitted that they used Gazan civilians as human shields, even giving a specific thing called the Mosquito Protocol, where they get Gazan civilians to enter buildings to search for bombs instead of using the typical military spiel of dogs, literally showing that they see Palestinians as less than dogs. Now that I've said this, I'm sure I'm going to see all those people who were on my feed saying yeah, Israel's actually good. I sure can't wait to see all the people and people in general. I would gladly want to see all these people just loudly denounce the IDF for doing this inhumane thing. Because remember, you guys said that it was inhumane when Hamas did it, and since Israel's doing it now, naturally, I assume I'm going to see a lot of you guys denounce oh man, that's fucked up. Why would Israel do such a thing? I noticed that in the time that I saw this story come out, I haven't really seen a lot of denouncements. I wonder. Much the same way when I released that poll, it said there were 15% of you guys who voted for Israel. I don't know why you're even fucking here. You guys are insane. Subhuman to me. I don't care. If you support Israel at this point, you are just an Israeli ethno-nationalist. That's it. There is no nuance to it. There literally is no nuance, no debate, no discussion. The end. I've made multiple episodes on this topic alone, and I've covered it in many news stories. Seriously, if you at this point, after seeing Israel literally is going to defend raping their prisoners, and then you're going to still be we're still on the Israeli side. It's what is going to change your mind? Nothing. Because you're just an Israeli ethno-nationalist. That's all you are. That is what you are. If you support Israel, still, up to this point, you are just an Israeli ethno-nationalist. I forgot what the point I was even going to make was, but yeah, just genuinely. Also, more Israel news. Israel is buying Google ads to discredit the UN's top Gaza aid agency. It's a story by Wired that goes over the fact that Israel has been literally spending a lot of time using their money to literally target ads to make people not like UNRWA, the organization that has been one of the largest supporters of human rights in the world. Literally tricking you into thinking that it's UNRWA. Literally, it says here, back in mid-January, Mara Kronefeld was Googling the name of the nonprofit she runs, which raises money in the U.S. on behalf of the leading humanitarian aid provider in Gaza. Atop the search results for her organization, UNRWA, partner to the UN Relief and Works Agencies for Palestinian Refugees in the Northeast, she saw a surprising ad. It read like a promo for the UN agency, but the link directed to an Israeli government website. Kronefeld said she had found the beginning of a months-long online advertising campaign by Israel to discredit and defund UNRWA. Another thing that really just showed just how insane this fucking it's just insane. Israel is just so objectively, cartoonishly evil. When you're literally a group that is specifically made to help people in refugees, and you're just we're gonna try everything in our power to make sure that they don't get funding. It's that's why it's so, again, so fucking cartoonishly evil. I mean this again in the most genuine sense. Literally, all I've had to do to be even remotely swayed on this issue was just look at what Israel is doing. That's it. I started this particular wave of the conflict as a two-stater who was afraid of the term anti-Zionist. Literally. Now, after seeing what Israel has been doing for literally just the past 2 years, it's just literally just what the fuck. Anyways, that's all I gotta say on that topic. So let's move on to the next news story, which is very interesting. Apparently, our government is inept and full of idiots. And apparently, what happened was there was an attack on the Houthis, and Trump was going to kill the Houthis, whatever. And there was a signal chat, there was a chat room where they were discussing the plans for this attack. And it turns out that for some fucking reason, they added a random ass journalist to the discussion who was able to screenshot the entire chat log and posted it on his account. There's not much else I could say about this story really, because it's just what did we expect? We chose a guy who literally picked the most inept people to run every single institution. So it's just what is even going on? And I don't expect anything to be done because we live in an insane country. Literally, the fact that Trump is even in office shows that we're an insane country. He literally tried to overthrow the fucking government, and then it's just oh yeah, now he's back in government. It's let's move on to the next story, because this is the next story that I think will be interesting. And, this might actually lead me to ask a question that I might put into a poll, might not put into a poll, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments if you bother to even watch this part of the episode, but okay, so, ChatGPT has just invaded, this is about ChatGPT, copyright, and AI. So, ChatGPT just revealed that they are now posting, now, you can put in ChatGPT, you can, click and, type in a prompt, and you can show, you can have Studio Ghibli style art be posted through ChatGPT. Studio Ghibli is a very prominent Japanese anime studio that has made a lot of prominent movies like Princess Mononoke, Ponyo, Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, My Neighbor Totoro, and their most famous person affiliated with the studio is Hayao Miyazaki. And a lot of people have been getting in on this trend, basically saying, oh yeah, it's over. It's even at the point where the White House has literally posted Studio Ghibli AI art of them deporting an immigrant woman. And it's so insane in so many levels. The first one everybody needs to acknowledge is the fact that Hayao Miyazaki is literally basically a communist. He's basically a communist. Literally, it says here on the wiki page, Miyazaki considers himself, quote, traditionally a leftist in terms of emotional affinity, emphasizing his commitment to his ideals despite changing political and economic landscapes. He abandoned his Marxist values while creating the new shot of the Valley of the Wind, as he felt status in the elite class did not affect her class consciousness, recognizing that no matter what class people are born into, idiots are still idiots and good people are still good. After the release of The Wind Rises in 2013, Miyazaki recognized leftist values in his movies, citing his influence by communism as defined by Karl Marx, but criticized real socialist experiments of socialism in countries like the Soviet Union. He was also well known for being a union guy back when he first started. Publicly criticized Shinzo Abe, who wanted to repeal the law in Japan that banned war. Felt that the Japanese government needed to give more apologies to Korean comfort women, i.e. sex slaves, because Japan is well known for stealing a bunch of Korean women and then making them sex slaves. But they still refused to acknowledge that fact. Refused to attend the Academy Awards in 2003 because the United States was invading Iraq and he didn't agree with that decision. Was very critical of the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, which was well known for publishing very offensive caricatures of Muslims, which led to a terrorist attack on Charlie Hebdo studios. And he basically said hey, why would you even bother making really racist caricatures? Another thing about Miyazaki is the fact that he is very critical of AI art. He's been very critical of just the apparently I didn't even know really his full stance on AI art, but he apparently is extremely critical, even stating that people who create AI art, quote, whoever creates this stuff has no idea what pain is whatsoever. I am utterly disgusted. I strongly feel that this is an insult to life itself. So, yeah, clearly Miyazaki would not be a fan of this AI trend regardless. But another thing is that this has apparently reopened a lot of wounds that they're really trying to not want open again. Because, for those who don't know, ChatGPT has been desperately trying to make their AI fair use. Like, one big thing they've been trying to do recently, like, their AI has been accused a lot about, like, stealing, plagiarizing, that kind of stuff. Well, they are very desperately trying to make it so that their AI is classified as fair use, so that they can have the legal right to take all these works, publish them, and do all this stuff. And most importantly, make money off of them. But the problem is, this isn't. None of this is fair use. All of this is copyright infringement. Every single one of these things that they're doing is copyright infringement. They're not getting the legal right. They are I even actually have an audio clip of an Esau the Rose thing of like a possible YouTube short I could make on this subject, because I just want to say it point blank. ChatGPT is not they're not fair use. None of this is fair use. This is all blatant copyright infringement. Like, just blatantly taking a book and then regurgitating the information off of that book onto it is copyright infringement. Aaron Swartz got in trouble for way less. ChatGPT is not getting in trouble. Like, they're not getting in trouble because they're rich. They're able to, and that's another thing. Because I've seen this argument because, like, I saw this argument because someone, like, on Twitter posted, like, a thing where it's, like, abolish copyright and, like, wanted to, like, spread the word of the copyleft movement. But then a lot of, like, lefties instinctively rush to be like, AI bros support this tweet. But it's like, no, they don't. ChatGPT is... I thought about making a video on this topic. I actually thought about making another copyright-related video specifically on this issue. Because the fact of the matter is, again, they don't want this. I used this as an example in my recent copyright video. In my most recent copyright video. Where I had ChatGPT stealing from that artist, like stealing from that person writing down something, and then DeepSeek steals from ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT says, hey, that's not fair, because it's literally what happened. Literally, that's what happened. ChatGPT is mad at DeepSeek for, quote-unquote, stealing from them, but they want to have the right to steal from other creators, and that's why they don't agree with me. Like, they're fighting for a ladder to climb up, but then when you want to climb up that same ladder, they want to rip that ladder away from you. They want copyright infringement for thee, not for ye. And I've actually seen some of this kind of like be used to try and defend the current copyright system as it is. But the problem is, it's not working. It's not working. ChatGPT is being allowed to steal. AI art is being allowed to steal from all these different works under the current copyright system. Like, this is happening right now. This isn't happening in a post-copyright world. This is happening now. And again, none of this should even be a legal battle at all. Because ChatGPT, you own nothing. You own nothing of your work. ChatGPT made everything. You own jack shit. I would kill to be part of a legal battle on this. I would, because that is the argument I would 100% use. Here's the thing. My viewpoint is this. Like, there are multiple things I can say about this. One, ChatGPT is lazy. It's lazy. It is 100% lazy. You're putting in the prompt and then generating something. Whether it be an image, whether it be a word prompt. And I find it insane that there are people who literally unironically think that this is, like, better to use than fucking Google. I don't get it. I thought ChatGPT was used to, like, fucking, like, write things down. But no, apparently people literally go to ChatGPT to literally look up stuff. Look up information. How is that easier than Google? And I know, like, it's easier just because they post the results faster. That's all it is. It's lazy, of course, if you want to use it in a creative sphere, because you actually need to put in the actual fucking work to do it. And yeah, sure, it might make things easier for me. Maybe it would make things easier if I just put all this stuff in a fucking, like, AI thing, and then it generated a thing. I'm sure if I downloaded the most recent version of Photoshop, and then, like, used their fucking, like, AI versions, I would make great Photoshop things. But I would much rather prefer my way, because it's mine. I created it. But in a copyright sense, literally, none of the ChatGPT things should be copyrighted at all. Because you didn't make it. in order for it to be copyrighted, it needs to have a human creator. Putting words in a prompt does not make you the creator. I can copyright this podcast because I wrote the script. I'm saying the words. I'm going to put this in an editing software. I'm going to do all that. I put in the work into this. But if I were to take this script, put it in an AI art thing, put it in an AI generated thing, then it does all the work. Either it owns the rights to the work and you give it human rights, or no one owns the work. The same thing with the Naruto thing. I didn't mention this when I did my fucking copyright video, but in the Naruto legal battle, not like the anime Naruto, but there was a monkey named Naruto that took a photo, and then the guy who owned the photo equipment and tried to make the claim oh, I own the work. But since Naruto took the photo, it is a public domain work. But then PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, stepped in and stated that they stated that if anybody should own the work, it should be Naruto. And that's a fact that I 100% get behind. If anybody owns the work, it's them. If anybody owns the work, it's Naruto. If anybody owns the AI generated art, it's the AI that made it. But the problem is, I also can't trust an actual legal battle on this issue because I know what's going to happen. It's the same thing. I said this again in my copyright video. Again, I brought that copyright video to get more views because I genuinely love that fucking video. That copyright video deserves way more views. Someone in the comments said it. Yeah, they're right. They deserve way more views. I love it. But in that video, I cited a very specific example of a woman named Carol Highsmith who submitted all of her photos to be put in the public domain. Then, Alamy and Getty Images blatantly stole all the images and started making money off of them. And then when she sued them for making money off of her work, a judge fucking dismissed her case because, well, actually, it doesn't matter. Since they're public domain, you can't do anything about it. It's yes, you can. They're getting away with copy fraud, which is, again, explicitly illegal under the United States copyright law. It is explicitly illegal. And this is why I'm against copyright in general, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to benefit them. It's going to benefit the guys on top over us. And that's why I'm against most social hierarchies in that sense. That's why I'm a socialist in general. I'm against anything that makes the people on top, the rich, the powerful, have any power over us. We're the common people, we're the real people, we're getting screwed. Basically, the thing I was going to ask is whether or not I should make a video just kind of laying that out. Because I just want to make another video about copyright. I just don't know what specific thing I want to make. I just don't know what else I could make. I don't know what else I could make on a copyright video. I don't know what else I can make. I want to make more copyright videos. I want to make more copyright videos. I love talking about the copyright issue because no one else talks about it anymore. And all the people who talk about it are people who have the surface level analysis we need to expand fair use, or they're just people again maybe I should. I wish I thought I was gonna be one of those. I thought this is kind of cringe back in the day, but now I actually maybe I should have been born in a different generation because I would have killed to be part of the fucking Lawrence Lessig, Aaron Swartz style world. That'd be great. Anyways, speaking of great, let's move on to the main topic of this video: the 2025 Canadian election. This is the second country to get a second round of coverage. The years go forward, and that means we're going to talk about some countries again. While I'd love to talk about newer countries now and again, but sometimes it's just better to talk about some countries that we already know about. And it won't be the last one either, because there are a lot of countries that I've talked about in the past in this series that are going to be getting new elections this year. But before we get into that, why don't we finish up? Why don't we talk a little bit about this country? Much like other Anglo nations, I don't have to go too far back. For Canada, all I gotta do is start 10 years ago. In 2015, a man by the name of Justin Trudeau was elected Prime Minister of Canada, son of former Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Both men are figureheads of each era's liberalism of Canada. In fact, Justin himself made a huge effort to be the archetypal liberal, a young, bright, shining glimmer of hope for his nation. a story very similar to the other elected leaders of North America around the same time, Enrique Peña Nieto and Barack Obama. However, if you know anything about those two, and given this channel, you probably should be, what ended up happening is that these three were just same old liberalism with a new paint job. Trudeau tried to hide it with support for pronouns and contrasting himself with the recently elected Donald Trump. And while some people might have been stupid enough to fall for it, JJ McAuliffe, sorry, my allergies are acting up again. But in the same time that Trudeau was trying to pretend that he's like some sort of like big, like, oh, I'm a huge, like, progressive type figure, he was also supporting the Trans-Pacific Partnership, supporting countries like Israel and Saudi Arabia despite their human rights abuses, saying that he would be a huge supporter to end climate change, then in the following breath say, we need new oil and gas lines. His government tried to cover up a private company from taking bribes to work with Libya, but remember, this guy's supposed to be like a progressive. He did bring some attention to the plight of Canada's sins in regards to Indigenous people. He handled COVID better than the United States, but like 95% of the world did too, so it's not much of a W. And much like Obama in the United States, this wasn't good at all. Plus, there were some who were somehow convinced that Trudeau was somehow some sort of, like, socialist, even to the point where there's a huge conspiracy theory that Justin Trudeau is the illegitimate son of Fidel Castro because Pierre Elliott Trudeau was friendly to Castro during his tenure. But a lot of people would end up opposing him, including a bunch of infants driving trucks who were mad that they had to get a little shot. And yet, despite this, Trudeau was somehow managed to squeak by the skin of his neck. Like, he kept like going, he kept like getting like slimmer margins every election, but he would still manage to come out on top. Even to the point where he actually managed to get a confidence and supply relationship with another party, because he made the promise that he was going to try and appeal to them and try to push for their things. However, because he ended up lying, that fell through. And he was facing a lot of bad faith, like bad will arguments. Like the people were just starting to be like, yeah, we don't like you anymore. So Trudeau decided that he was going to resign from his administration because it was pretty clear, like at the time, he was losing a lot of by-elections, his poll numbers were dropping, and it just didn't seem like he was going to be facing any election wins. So for the good of his party, he decided to resign from his administration. So now, regardless of who is prime minister, there is going to be some form of change coming to our neighbors to the north pretty soon. And with that, let's get into the candidates/parties. In Canada's elections, there are, I gotta be real, despite the fact that I don't like JJ that much, he is kind of right when he describes the Canadian political system as broadly a two-party plus system. Like, we all know how political systems work, right? The United States is a two-party system where everything essentially revolves around two parties. Then you have countries like Mexico that have like a relatively like multi-party system. Meanwhile, Canada has a two-party plus system where broadly, like it's similar to the UK, where broadly most of the political discourse revolves around two parties. But there are a couple of other parties that do have like some prominence in Canada. The Canadian media has broadly agreed that there are at least three other parties that are prominent enough to talk about, because those are the three other parties that are represented in their parliament. So why don't we start off with the governing party? We have the Liberal Party. As the name implies, they are a liberal political party, and they've been in charge of Canada for 10 years. They are currently led by former governor of the Bank of Canada, Mark Carney, who was elected to replace Justin Trudeau. Now, originally, I actually thought that Carney, I did some tertiary research on Carney on his Wikipedia page, and I thought that he was going to be a candidate to Trudeau's left, because he said some things that seemed somewhat left of center, but from reading some articles, it seems that the way he's pitching himself, he is trying to run to Trudeau's right. Basically, it basically seems like what they're actually doing is he's just going to be a bit more less focused on social issues, which seemingly makes sense. They're putting the guy who was in charge of a background position to be the leader of a political party. Carney's not anti-social issues, He's not like anti-trans, I don't think. He has a trans daughter, and apparently that became like a bit of a contention in the campaign because Mark Carney, like apparently people like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I can't really say much of it because I can't tell if it's like verified or not. But like allegedly, like some people are claiming that Mark Carney sent them to like a controversial trans clinic. And people have been like trying to like make this into an issue. But like Mark Carney, like the one thing I've seen is that apparently like when he first became prime minister, because like when he took Justin Trudeau's place, he did become prime minister. One of the first things he did was like he cut the cabinet really small, and one of the things that he removed was like the gender inclusivity one. So my guess is that he's like basically just trying to ignore social issues for as long as he can, not necessarily in the sense because like again we've seen this with other issues. Like, we've seen, like, Democrats, they're trying to make this claim, like, oh, we gotta go away from trans issues. The Labour Party became huge TERFs. So maybe for this cycle, liberals are gonna try and go class reductionist. I don't know. I don't even know if they'll be able to do that. Because, again, like, this guy's, like, a fucking, like, bank guy. Like, he's, like... But we'll see if that can do anything. Okay, so, next, let's move on to party number 2. The Conservative Party. As the name suggests, it's a conservative party. Originally, it was more of a mainstream conservative political party, but it has started to shift towards a right-wing populist phase to counteract a smaller party in Canadian politics that has slowly been trying to, like, inch and, like, eat, like, that sort of support that usually has been coinciding with a lot of, like, right-wing movements around the world. The People's Party of Canada. Which I will say right here, right now, I will not be covering the People's Party of Canada. That's the first and last mention that we're going to get of that party. Because I've seen the poll numbers for this party, the party has not really been doing so hot. It's not even like the Reform UK Party, which started out small and then became big. So far, this party's just looked like it's dead in the water. Especially with this new right-wing populist wave in the Conservative Party. It looks like there's just no room for this party to grow. Their leader is MP and best friend of J.J. McAuliffe, Pierre Poilievre, who has been a bit of a controversial figure because of a simple issue that he refuses to follow. Okay, so in 2022, he was elected as the leader of the party, and 2 years later, the Canadian government released a report into foreign election interference, and not only did it show that there were some issues of that during this election, but also stated that a couple of parliamentarians within, I don't necessarily know if they like just shrunk it down to just the Conservative Party, but they said that there were a couple of parliamentarians that were willing participants of foreign election interference. And since that made people like shift their minds to the Conservative Party, as most of these right-wing parties are the ones that usually get a lot of foreign election interference, at least in the West, they basically said, hey, like he basically went, hey guys, hold on. Give me the name of those MPs, and demanded that he not only get to see the list, but also that list should be made public. However, there's one big problem. In order to see that list, he needs to submit a paperwork to get security clearance to see that. But he has refused to do so. Every single other leader of the Canadian political party who has the privilege to see this information, everybody who has to see that information needs to get that clearance. But Pierre refused to do so. Even going so far as to basically say, you know what? I think that these allegations are just made up because they won't publish the names. Which is a little bit of a here and there thing. Because, like, on one end, I do think sometimes this information just needs to be made public. But on the other end, I can also see why they probably want to keep it under lock and key. Like we had a similar thing in the United States where in the immediate aftermath of World War II, there was an investigation into whether or not onto how far I've talked about this before, but like remember how Ernest Landine was like a person who like was really well known for his like association with the Nazis? Well, there was an investigation after his death and after the war ended. The United States did an investigation into him, basically said, like, hey, let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. And while the results had not been made public, immediately after that election, a ton of members of Congress just magically started losing the election. Granted, it could have also just been their general isolationist political views, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, there are some people who seem to think that number is way bigger. Like, the number is not just Ernest Lundin and a couple of other people. There's some people who have, like, apparently, like, massive lists, and I was just like, I want to see those lists. And the next political party is the New Democratic Party, a social democratic, formerly democratic socialist political party in Canada. It used to be socialist up until around 2012. Okay, so basically what happened was, in the Canadian election scene, the parties were basically like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then in 2011, the Liberals, everybody hated the Liberals, but then a lot of the Liberal votes shifted to the New Democratic Party, which made them the official, like, opposition party of Canada. Like, granted, most of that was kind of because, like, the Liberals just lost so massively, but the NDP did make some big gains. Like, the Liberals lost 43 seats, and the NDP gained 67. Now, Jack Layton had already kind of started, like, shifting the party away from, like, a broader, like, an actual, like, hardcore democratic socialist philosophy, and broaden it to be a bit more of a social democratic philosophy. But the problem is, he was basically like, I think the best course of action for the party would kind of just be to, like, broadly become a social democratic party, just so, like, we can be able to siphon off some liberal support. He died of an unspecified cancer, and then Tom Mulcair became the leader, and then basically the party just became, like, officially, like, a social democratic party. Like, it's still the primary vehicle for socialists in Canada, but it's not like it's primarily a social democratic party. Come on, we all know it's primarily a social democratic party. The party is led by MP Jagmeet Singh, the first visible minority to lead a political party, who is of Punjabi descent and a practicing Sikh. Or some of you might pronounce it as Sikh, but I read somewhere that it is actually, like, the official pronunciation is supposed to be Sikh, but a lot more people in the West, especially, we call it Sikh because we associate the term Sikh as something bad, and I think there's even like a common, like, joke, like a common, like, not like a joke, but like a common, like, wives' tale that, like, oh, when Sikhs came to America, or came to, like, Canada, or came to, like, the West, people kept making fun of them, like, haha, Sikh, you're sick, and then, they called themselves Sikh. So, like, it doesn't really matter that much regardless. So I'm just letting you know that because, like, I'll try to pronounce it like Sikh, because again, I think that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. But if I pronounce it Sikh as well, like, again, it could be either or. It could be either or, whatever. But Singh is actually apparently a slightly controversial political figure due to the fact of a big problem with some Sikhs in Canada, because a lot of Sikhs in Canada support the Khalistan political movement, which is a movement of many people in the Indian state of Punjab, where Punjab is a state in India that has a lot of Sikhs in it, and many of them feel that the Indian government of like the Hindu Indian government has been very much oppressive of the Sikhs. So many people in that state feel that it is best for the Punjabis to leave and form an independent nation known as Khalistan. And it's apparently a little bit of an issue because sometimes, as you do, sometimes these independence movements, especially ones with religious fundamentalism tied to it, can lead to some interesting figures. Even to the point where in India there was a terrorist attack by Khalistani Khalistani Sikh fundamentalists. That it's JJ McAuliffe has a video about it, and I guarantee you that he gets a lot of stuff wrong, but I think there is some element of understanding, basically to his viewpoint is that he, a majority of Canada, they didn't really care about it at first because it seemed like a foreign issue, which probably is just racism on a lot of Canadians' parts, but there's also an element where they see oh wait, hold on a second, something's not right, because apparently it wasn't taken seriously at the time, and there was a lot of fumbling of the case that really just made the case really not good. And another argument is regardless of the oppression that the Sikhs have against the Indian government, that's not an excuse to blow up a plane. But one big problem is that a lot of Sikhs in Canada openly support the Khalistani movement. whether they're like just supportive of like the idea of an independent Khalistan, or like, but some of them go like one step further, and a lot of them do like actually like sympathize and like praise many of the Khalistani extremists that have done bad actions. One interesting thing that happened was that apparently Justin Trudeau invited a Sikh member of the Liberal Party to attend a meeting in India, and what happened is that he brought a former Sikh extremist to India to have diplomatic immunity to just show up in India. And Jagmeet Singh, being one of the most prominent Sikh politicians in Canada, he's kind of had a bit of a problem of teetering a line on both supporting his community, but then also it's like, oh, but like, is he going too far? Or is he like setting a bad example? Because apparently there was one interview where they basically asked him like, hey, do you agree with the like actual government consensus that the Sikh extremists did this bad thing? And there's apparently a subsection of like Sikh Canadians who believe that it was an inside job, or like it was like the Indian government that did it. And basically what happened was Jagmeet Singh basically said like, well, I don't really know the full ins and outs of the story, but we're gonna get to the bottom of it. And then in a later interview, he basically reneged on that because it's like, again, he has to teeter a line between like, you know, supporting his specific community and their interests, and then also like broader Canada. Singh is not even allowed to go to India, apparently, because they view him as a security threat due to his association with like the Sikh movement. Now, I don't really know a lot of the ins and outs about all of the conflicts in Indian politics necessarily. I do know that a lot of Indian politics is very Hindu nationalist associated, and the Sikhs do have kind of a point in the sense that they have been oppressed. I mean, I've talked about how like India has dealt with their Muslim population on this channel before. Clearly, there isn't a lot of like goodwill towards their like fellow people of different religions. Speaking of, the next political party, we have the Bloc Québécois, a Quebec nationalist political party. For those who don't know, there is a Canadian province there's a Canadian province named Quebec. And that particular province, due to the fact that it is primarily French speaking and has a lot of French heritage, feels that they should be their own thing. Originally, the party was we want to leave Canada, but now it's kind of transitioned to be a bit more like, hey, we just kind of want a more control and sovereignty in our own province. This party is very complex ideologically because it's primarily focused on the issue of Quebec nationalism and wants to do things that Quebec voters like. But here's the problem. Voters are stupid, especially extremely nationalistic voters. You'll get people who, on one end, will vote for, we know this about this within America. In America, we have people who claim that they're, super hardcore MAGA people, but then on the other end, they'll vote for, legalizing weed, even though Trump doesn't want to legalize weed. And the Quebec Nationalist Party, Bloc Québécois, has a similar issue as well. On a lot of economic issues, they're pretty left-wing, but on social issues, it's not like they're necessarily right-wing, but they are very nationalistic. One of the big things is that they really hate Muslims and Sikhs. One of their big things is that they don't want to allow any sort of, they don't want to treat Muslims and Sikhs good. They fought really hard to push a law in their own province that would ban religious garb in public, which would include banning, turbans and any sort of, religious headdress, which would be very hard for Muslims. They also want to fight really hard to exclude Quebec from the laws that will, protect, that force them to do anything that helps minorities. Which is very ironic, because one thing Quebec really is hardcore on doing is making it so that the rest of Canada has to abide by everything they want to do. One of the big things is that signs in Canada have stop and stop in French. How in a lot of America, they have to have a lot of Spanish translations on a lot of things. In Canada, they have to have a lot of French translations on a lot of things. Irony, but not really ironic, because that's how nationalists are. Their leader is Yves-Francois Blanchet. And last, and certainly least, we have the Canadian Green Party, an environmentalist political party that is basically built by rejects of liberals and the NDP. Basically, anybody who was considered too fringe for the liberals and too fringe for the NDP basically gets a spot here. People who consider themselves too pure to be part of the liberals or the NDP find their way here. Like people who are like either really hardcore on the environmentalist issue or other sort of like fringe political issues, quote unquote fringe, regardless. I mean, there's some issues that if you don't fit in like the NDP or the liberals like specific brands of politics, they're like, maybe we'll join the Green Party. Historically, the party's been pretty weak for a long period of time, only having one MP. But for a short time period, they had an electoral boom where they had 3 MPs in a row. And after seeing that massive electoral win, the longtime leader of the party decided, you know what? Screw it. We're going to resign. I'm going to resign as leader of the party and just kind of like figure just let the Greens kind of like do their own thing. And like, you know what? Maybe I'll just be an MP. And then that's when we got a bit of a divide in sort of like the party's like tenure. See, there were 2 people who were really close for vying for control of the party. Dimitri Lascaris, who was like he was like an eco-socialist who wanted to turn the party into an eco-socialist political party. Then there was Annamie Paul, who basically just kind of wanted the Green Party to kind of like maintain its sort of like amorphous ideology that kind of allows for NDP and the liberal like rejects to join the party. And then what ended up happening is that this candidate essentially got the endorsement of the previous leader, because what ended up happening was basically the previous leader said, hey, you know what, I'm gonna like help fundraise for the 2 like oppressed people in this race, Annamie Paul, and there was another candidate who was non-binary, so they're like, I'm gonna help these 2 people go into it. But what ended up happening is the non-binary person just rejected the offer and said, no, I'm good. So essentially the leader the leader basically said, hey, like they essentially just endorsed Annamie Paul since they were black and Jewish. So it's like, oh yeah, so they basically just got all the support. So then they ended up winning. And then Annamie Paul decided to do the dumbest fucking thing ever and decide to make the party a Zionist party. Like she just randomly just like, okay, we're gonna make the Green Party like a super pro-Israel party. Which is one big problem. The 2 people who just got elected as Green MPs, Paul Manley and Jenica Atwin, were not supporters of Israel. Paul Manley specifically ran as a Green because the NDP wasn't pro-Israel enough, and Jen Atwin also was like, hey, this is fucked up. What Israel's doing is fucked up. The 3rd MP was a bit more agnostic on the Israel issue. Like, they had expressed some support for some Israelis, but, like, they also expressed, you know, like, just like a general, like, pro-peace candidate, so naturally they were, of course, antithetical to Israel. So what ended up happening is that Annamie Paul decided that they were going to try and expel the 2 Green MPs that just got elected. And then what ended up happening is that Jenica Atwin left the Green parties and joined the Liberals, and then Paul Manley lost his election. So Annamie Paul was just like, oh, I fucked up real bad. And then she resigned because she was the worst fucking leader that the Green Party could ever have. And the Green Party at that point had like 2 leaders. So what ended up happening is that they needed to reboot and/or due to a return to form. So basically, they decided to elect new leaders. And when I say leaders, they actually decided to now go under a co-leadership model. Their leaders are former party chair and one of the MPs, Elizabeth May, alongside journalist Jonathan Pennualt. Now, what's interesting is that May is apparently going to try and run things behind the scenes. Like, apparently no one knows how to fucking run the party other than her. So, she's going to run the party behind the scenes, while Jonathan is going to be the face of the party. An interesting strategy. I will admit, it's an interesting strategy. I guess they just want to make it more explicit that Elizabeth May has control of the party. I mean, I was originally a bit more like shitting on JJ's like sort of philosophy, like, oh, Elizabeth May basically has complete control of the Green Party at this point. But it's like, nah, I mean, Elizabeth May basically shadow endorsed Anime Paul, so like, I mean, I guess he's not wrong. So it's like, I guess it's not wrong. Now, there are some issues that are going to be going on in this election. Okay, so the first main issue for this election was the cost of living. Basically, like with most liberal parties, they never really have to go to a cost of living issue. But the problem is, they can't really, liberals don't really know how to do much, and conservatives have been rushing to blame things like the carbon tax and the immigration on this. And they're like, that was the big thing. And then Donald Trump came into the scene and started doing a lot of bullshit about I want to make Canada the 51st state, 51st state, 51st state. And now, apparently, all the parties have to pretend this is somehow a very important issue. And basically, all the parties have to run on, we are anti-Trump. That's basically all the parties have to run on now. Who is willing to stand up to Trump the hardest? And this is the one person that has really been fucked up in this strategy is Pierre Paravello. And that's one of the big things. And JJ, I keep mentioning JJ, but JJ, one of the big things that a lot of people have been trying to do is they're trying to do this thing where all these nationalist movements keep trying to pretend that they are the same thing. But now we're ultimately seeing that it's just not true. A lot of them are obviously racist, sexist, homophobic, all that other stuff. But they can't do one thing. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if push comes to shove, Pierre Paravello is going to choose Canada over the US. Unlike ones in the third world, he can't choose America over Canada. It was the thing with Javier Milei. Trump thought that he could just puppeteer him Javier, he could puppeteer Javier, he puppeteers Javier Milei, he could puppeteer Nayib Bukele, but he thought Pierre Paravello was going to be the next puppet. But no, that's not happening, apparently. So now, despite the fact that they're basically running on the same thing, immigrants bad, liberals are evil, somehow they're now enemies in this race. And this was the thing that was propping up Justin Trudeau's popularity, that he was one of the figures that was I am the most opposed to Trump. So basically that's all they had. So it's okay, it's pretty clear how this is going to pan out now. Alright, let's get into some events that happened in the election. Okay, the first one happened on March 10th, and it was only popular on left Twitter, because basically what happened was one of their MPs posted a tweet saying how the Canadian election is going to be center-right versus right-wing, and how the NDP is going to give a voice to the center-left. And a lot of people on left Twitter started getting mad, because they're this is kind of solidifying that the NDP is not really that left-wing. I guess it's not really that surprising, but, that's just kind of lefties on Twitter kind of just do weird things. Okay, then came March 19th, where Trump's divide with the Canadian Conservatives became so noticeable that apparently Donald Trump has stated that of the two candidates for this election, the one that he would most like to win is Mark Carney, because he thinks he can have a better deal with Carney than Pierre Paravello. I don't know if this is sort of like a sarcastic thing, because he said a similar thing in the 2019 or 2020, 2020 elections, I think 2020 elections, where he basically sarcastically endorsed two candidates. But the way he talked about them, it was just very, very much unironically sounding. But he just he was seemingly ironically endorsing candidates, but he really seemed just openly endorsing two Democrats. And then the last event that happened that's notable is on March 26th, where The Guardian released a news story that compiled some issues that Canada has been facing in regards to foreign election interference in this election, where China apparently tried to influence the Liberal Party leadership election to stop Carney, and that China, Pakistan, Iran, and India are expected to try and do some influence on this election as well. They didn't give any specifics, but from what I take a guess, I'm going to guess that the Indian election interference is going to revolve around trying to make sure that Sikh candidates don't win. But regardless, let's move on to polling. Now, this is election where polling is actually very interesting. Okay, so basically, what happened is, very early on in the election, as I mentioned in the news story, I mentioned at the beginning, very early on in the election, like prior to the election really going on, it seemed like this was going to be a massive blowout for the Liberals, because that was one of the big things that the Conservative Party was going to do for this election. They were going to run really hard on a campaign of like, Justin Trudeau fucked up Canada so bad that we're the only party that could stand up and fight for what's right. And they were running their whole campaign on like, fuck Justin Trudeau, fuck Justin Trudeau, fuck Justin Trudeau, fuck Justin Trudeau, fuck Justin Trudeau. Big problem is, now Justin Trudeau is gone. So now, they don't have Justin Trudeau to run against. Like, literally, take a look at this. The day before Justin Trudeau announces that he's going to retire, the election results were 47 Conservative, 21 Liberals. Then, in the immediate weeks after Justin Trudeau announces a resignation, they have relatively similar numbers, but then soon we get 39 to 33, 38 to 30, 38 to 31, 36 to 33, 38 to 35. Then soon we got numbers like 37, 38, 36, 38, 35 to 40. Then Mark Carney gets elected to be Liberal leader. And then soon sworn in. And let's look at the numbers again. 37, 37, 33, 42, 38, 34, 39, 41, 31, 49, 37, 40, 34, 38, 39, 33, 35, 34, 35, 39. Then we get a huge streak in Liberal wins, ranging from like the high 30s to low 40s. And the poll number results right before the election showed a 44 to the Liberals, 38 to the Conservatives, 6 to the NDP, 5 for the Bloc, and 3 for the Greens. Then during the election campaign, the Liberals have basically been winning the entirety of all the polls. The closest they've ever gotten is when the NDP does really well in the polls. Like there was one poll that has 4% for Greens, 6% for the Bloc, 11 for the New Democrats, 37 for the Conservatives, and 38 for the Liberals. And the most recent poll has 2 for the Greens, 6 for the Bloc, 7 for the New Democrats, 38 for the Conservatives, and 43 for the Liberals. So it seems like the Liberals are managed to bounce back from the slump that they have. And, well, conclusion is that it seems like the Liberals might actually pull through, surprisingly. Granted, the debates haven't happened yet. They're not going to happen yet. They're going to happen, like, in a month, I think. But it looks like the Liberals are actually going to bounce back. The Liberals are going to win, again, because they dumped Trudeau at the last second. Now, support? Now, this might not be that surprising, but I would have to say, like, barring very few exceptions, I think that it's in the best interest for you all to support the New Democrats. Yes, I know the New Democrats are just social democrats, and they're not really, like, hardcore lefties, but Canada does not really have that many options. Like, I mean, originally I would have given that, there are really only, like, 2 constituencies that I can even remotely say I actually don't support the New Democrats. And one is in Kitchener Centre, where I think the Green Party candidate Mike Maurice is fine. Granted, I'm not sure he's going to win, because he only really won because the Liberal candidate, like, raped somebody, and then what ended up happening is that, well, I guess they sexually assaulted somebody, but, like, what happened is that a lot of Liberal support shifted to Mike Maurice. And the only other constituency that I will not be backing an NDP candidate is the Nanamio Ladysmith constituency, where I'm backing the Green Party candidate, Paul Manley. Paul Manley is back at it again. I like Paul Manley's lore. The NDP candidate isn't that bad. Like, I mean, it's a constituency that the NDP is winning. So, like, I mean, if you're a Canadian in that constituency and you're like, I like the NDP candidate, I'm not gonna blame you. I'm not gonna blame you if you just keep backing them. But I'm just saying, you know, if you know that there's enough of you that are gonna make Paul Manley win, I'm not saying don't vote for him, but I'm saying you should. And watch after this video, somehow magically this constituency flips to the Tories because, oh, those two split the vote. Whoops! Notice how I didn't endorse Elizabeth May. I think in the last Canadian election, I did also give Elizabeth May, like, hey, I mean, Elizabeth May is kind of cool, but I mean, I don't know how cool she is anymore, actually. She's old. She should probably retire. In fact, I literally just looked up, in her constituency, there's an NDP candidate named Colin Plant. If you're in that constituency, vote for them. Don't vote for them. I don't really care. Effectively, she endorsed, she basically helped Anna Paul get elected. So, yeah, she clearly needs to go. And I mean, the only constituencies I really care about are like Jagmeet Singh and Burnaby Central, and Nikki Ashton and Churchill. I can't pronounce that last part of the one. Basically, those two, you know, especially considering it seems like Nikki Ashton might be in some trouble in this recent election because of the redrawn district. Might not be that favorable to her, so it's possible. Especially considering apparently the Liberals picked a really quote-unquote good candidate, so, you know, it's possible. We gotta make sure Nikki Ashton makes it through. She's basically the last thing that keeps the NDP, like, socialist leaning. So yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say on that. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to notify when a future video of mine comes out. And if here's some more content from me, consider supporting me on Patreon.